I had been a professional sports writer for a little over a month when I got to see my hero up close and personal. Brett Favre had an opportunity to set the all time passing yards record in NFL history, and I landed a press release to cover that game. It was the Green Bay Packers, my favorite team, visiting the St. Louis Rams, my second favorite team. I felt like I had arrived at the big time. Then, when I found out I got to take the field at the 2 minute warning to see the end of the game, I was really hyped. Did I get to see number four set the record? Was I able to be standing on the field to see him complete a pass? Or did I overindulge myself at the free media buffet to be unable to make it? Watch to find out. I'm Bill Roseberry. After a 20-year career in community journalism, I've seen my share of headlines, and this was an all-time great opportunity I was stoked to be a part of. Welcome to my channel and enjoy this original feature from my sports writing career. Bill Roseberry Stories serves up authentic narratives and heavy doses of Gen X nostalgia on the regular. I struggled to contain my enthusiasm while weaving through the crowd of Rams and Packers fans to retrieve my media credential at the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis. I'd been covering high school and college sports for a little over a month, but finally joining the ranks of a professional press box felt like I was being inducted into an elite fraternity. I mean, it's the NFL. It wasn't just any NFL game either. I was getting to cover my favorite team. Back in 1992, when I was 16 and St. Louis was without an NFL squad, I became a die-hard Green Bay Packers fan. The first time I saw Brett Favre take the field that season, he instantly became my favorite player. Now, I was tasked with writing a column about seeing my hero in action. It was week 15 of the 2007 season. I was 31, and the ageless icon was now 38. Today, he had the opportunity to become the all-time leading passer in NFL history. I already had plenty of material for a fun, nostalgic feature. Hi, my name is Bill Roseberry. I'm here to pick up my credential, I said giddily into the tiny box office window, fogging up the glass with my cold December breath. The woman behind the glass smiled and passed me an envelope. She could easily tell I was new to all of this. The media entrance was next to the box office window. As I opened the glass door, I saw security guards, a smattering of media personnel, stadium workers, and even a former player. I placed my laptop on the table for the guard to inspect, but my eyes were affixed on former Rams Super Bowl winning tight end Roland Williams. I had officially made it to the big time. Once through security, I hopped into one of the elevators, acting like I'd been there before, and rode it up to the press box. It sat near the top of the stadium, dead center on the 50-yard line. When I stepped off, I ogled at the massive smorgasbord of food and the who's who of St. Louis media celebrities. There were legendary writers from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, major TV sports broadcasters, and booming radio personalities. Meanwhile, I was writing for a tiny daily newspaper in Edwardsville, Illinois. I felt like I was walking the red carpet. I quickly found my assigned seat, set up my workstation, and bustled over to pile a plate high with food. Hospitality rooms are a serious perk for being a newspaper man. Of course, those glory days of St. Louis Super Bowls, MVP players, and the greatest show on turf were long over. The lowly Rams entered the day at a dismal 3-10, while the powerhouse Packers were 11-2 and ruling the NFC. This had all the makings of a total shellacking in favor of the green and gold. As kickoff neared, I stuffed myself with scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage links, and hash browns. It wasn't a gourmet meal, but hey, it was free. The field was a distant grid below. But from my high perch, I could see every single development. With the live broadcast airing on monitors inside the box, I could listen to the play-by-play to fill in the gaps, too. I was brimming with excitement, trying like hell to hide my rookie status from the veteran reporters around me. Surprisingly, the game was knotted at 7-7 at the end of the first quarter, and the Packers held just a slim 17-14 lead entering the half. I was growing anxious. I wanted more than anything to see Favre surpass Dan Marino for the all-time passing record, and suddenly, I wasn't so certain he was going to achieve the feat today. I fretted over the math while shoveling a couple of bratwursts, hot dogs, and a plate of nachos into my mouth during halftime. If nothing else, I could definitely get used to this setup. One cool aspect of the pro game was that I didn't have to keep my own stats. A vast welcome difference from grinding out high school box scores. Rams interns delivered beautifully updated stat sheets multiple times a quarter. It was pure luxury. Chatting with a few journalist acquaintances during the intermission, I learned about another mind-blowing perk. At the 2-minute warning of the fourth quarter, reporters were allowed down onto the field to watch the end of the game. As soon as the clock hit 0, we could follow the players directly into the press conference area and the locker rooms. That realization set off a spark of hope. What if Favre waited for his record-breaking moment until I was standing right there on the turf? It was statistically possible. I bustled back to my seat for the beginning of the third quarter to see if the Packers could start pouring it on. Rams quarterback Mark Bolger quickly tossed an interception, which led to a Green Bay field goal to make it 20-14. Then Favre threw a late touchdown pass to put the Packers comfortably ahead, 27-14 at the close of the third. Fortunately for my sideline dream, he still hadn't caught Marino, but he was darn close. He only needed 184 yards entering the game, and with his signature gunslinging style, it was surprising he hadn't cleared the milestone already. Then, in a bittersweet turn, history happened on the very first play of the fourth quarter. Favre whipped a quick pass over the middle to longtime receiver Donald Driver for a 7-yard gain. That was it. My longtime hero was now the all-time leading passer in NFL history. The moment cemented his on-field legacy. A 3-time MVP, a Super Bowl champion, the all-time touchdown leader, and now the passing king. I was stoked to watch it live, even if I was stuck in the skybox for it. They briefly stopped the game, and Favre met Driver for an emotional embrace. It was one of those classic schoolyard gridiron moments that number 4 was famous for. The public address announcer acknowledged the feat over the stadium speakers, prompting a rousing standing ovation. A massive sea of cheeseheads cheered in the stands, but even the hometown Rams fans applauded the history. Honestly, they were just happy to see something positive happen inside the dome. It had been a long few seasons. Favre shook hands with the referee, flipped the keepsake football to a sideline attendant, and it was right back to action. We still had a game to finish, and I was about to get a sideline view. Very soon. My chest tightened as the fourth quarter clock began to tick down. I kept one eye on the game and the other on the veteran reporters, waiting for the unspoken signal to move. With about 8 minutes left on the clock, the veterans suddenly stood up and made a break for the elevators. I grabbed my voice recorder and scrambled to join the pack. When the elevator doors slid shut, the air inside felt heavy. The game broadcast was piped into the elevator speakers, tracking the final minutes while we descended. Nobody spoke. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I didn't breathe again until the doors slid open on the ground level. I may not have been the NFL's all-time passing leader, but I was about to reach an all-time peak in my ordinary life. Ushers held us back at the edge of the tunnel, keeping us caged until the official whistle of the 2-minute warning. My head was on a swivel. There was nothing fancy about the underbelly of the stadium. It was all cold concrete floors and exposed pipes, looking and feeling a lot more like a logistics warehouse than a glamorous NFL stadium. Then the ushers waved their arms. Go. As I stepped through the mouth of the tunnel, my pulse skyrocketed. The moment we hit the turf, it felt as if the heavens had parted. I looked up at a towering wall of thousands of roaring fans. The sheer scale of it was dizzying. Cheerleaders danced in the corner of the end zone, their tight bodies and uniforms bright under the blinding stadium lights. Massive giants in armor roamed the sidelines. Coaches screamed frantic orders into their headsets. Trainers bustled with medical bags, and television cameras on massive rigs swung past. It was absolute sensory overload. I hurried down toward the opposite end zone because the Packers were back on offense. I desperately wanted to see Favre pass from mere feet away while time remained. I pressed myself as close to the white sideline boundary line as the officials allowed, locking my gaze onto the line of scrimmage. Blue, 82, hut! The ball was snapped. My eyes pinned to Favre as he took a deep, rhythmic drop back, scanning the field. Suddenly, wide receiver Greg Jennings came sprinting directly toward me in a sideline route. Jennings was listed as 6 feet and 200 pounds, virtually my size, but in full pads, bearing down on me like a freight train, he looked twice my size. As he slammed on the brakes at the boundary, Favre's bionic arm unleashed a rocket. In that split second, the stadium noise completely vanished. Time slowed to a crawl. The only thing that existed was the football, tracing a violent, perfect spiral through the air. I could hear the wind whistling off the laces as it cut toward the sideline. The pigskin exploded into Jennings' gloves with a sound like a gunshot. The sheer velocity of that sizzling spiral looked like it could break fingers. I instinctively took a sharp step backwards as Jennings' momentum carried him right past me, sending a gust of wind through my jacket. It was the final first down of the game, and the final nail in the coffin for the Rams. The Packers secured a 33-14 victory. As the final seconds ticked away, Favre knelt on the turf to run out the clock, and a deluge of teammates and opponents rushed the field to pat the legend on the back. The exact scenes I spent every Sunday afternoon watching on a television screen while calculating my fantasy football scores were unfolding inches from my face. I was a human sponge, taking mental snapshots to ensure I'd never forget a single detail. As the stadium lights dimmed slightly and the crowd filed toward the exits, I lingered, one of the last people left on the field. I slowly strolled through the tunnel on the opposite side of the stadium from where I'd entered. Stepping back into the concrete jungle of the concourse, I saw a portable stage fitted with a podium, backed by a strategic, sponsor-heavy backdrop of Packers logos. Reporters were meandering about, and cameramen were patiently adjusting their tripods, aiming their lenses like snipers on a precise mission. I took my place among my media fraternity, waiting. This was where Favre would give his post-game presser. When he appeared, sporting salt and pepper hair and a heavy gray 5 o'clock shadow, he looked less like the aw-shucks country kid I'd become smitten with as a teenager, and more like a battle-tested warrior. Reporters rushed the podium, blindly thrusting their voice recorders onto the wooden surface in front of the football icon. I followed suit, catching a fleeting glance of him as I slyly set my recorder down next to the others. The rapid-fire questions began, and Favre handled them with his trademark slow Mississippi drawl. "I'm tickled to death that I've had a chance to break these records," Favre said, before quickly adding that winning the football game mattered infinitely more than individual accolades. They were the same humble sports cliches I'd heard a million times on television, but hearing them live gave them a whole new weight. I couldn't muster the courage to shout out a question of my own, but I stood front and center for the entire show, completely captivated. Finally, a reporter asked the inevitable question about his age, a query that was becoming a weekly routine for the veteran quarterback. Favre just smiled. "I still think I fling it pretty good," he chuckled, flashing that famous boyish grin. Then he stepped down from the podium and was quickly escorted toward the locker room by the Green Bay public relations staff. There goes my hero, I thought, watching him disappear around the concrete corner. I stood there for another minute, soaking in the lingering energy of the room, before forcing myself back into professional mode. It was time to find a press room, open my laptop, and write about witnessing one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time break the ultimate record in person. It was an ordinary reporter's extraordinary day, and an experience I'll never forget. Man, I'll never forget the sound of that football whistling through the air and exploding into Greg Jennings' hands as he raced past me. Brett Favre had a heck of an arm, and I got to see it firsthand, a memory that can never be taken away from me. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been at a live sporting event to see a legend do something great? Or maybe you've seen a famous speech or historic event of some kind that you'll never forget. Drop your unforgettable moments and brushes with greatness comments below. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and make sure you're back here next week for more original content. And speaking of original content and unforgettable memories, this memory comes straight from my sports journalism career. Over my 20-year pro tenure, I've mastered the art of interviewing people, digging deep into their memories, and finding extraordinary stories hidden in ordinary life. Now I want to do that for you. I'm officially launching Bill Roseberry Stories written for you. This is a custom service where you and I will sit down for a one-on-one interview. You give me your favorite family memories, childhood adventures, or wild life stories. I will use my professional journalism skills to flesh those memories out into a beautifully crafted narrative short story that you can keep forever or pass down to your kids. Your memories deserve to be told the right way. Click the link in the description below to sign up, and let's get your story written. And I'll see you next week with another original narrative feature right here at Bill Roseberry Stories.